If you have animals or livestock, now is a time to consider stocking up on their feed if at all possible. Unfortunately, feed costs are expected to go up exponentially this summer. I have a friend who actually is a farmer who does a lot of hay on large scale. And then I have other friends that have some contacts at some local granaries, and they're expected to go up by $200 minimum per ton and be, if not double or triple, by midsummer. Now, I absolutely hope that those are wrong and that's not a reason to panic, but it is a reason to buy any extra feed that you can right now while prices are still lower, and to make sure that you have it on hand, especially if you are depending upon your livestock to feed you and your family. But even when we look at our dogs and cats and other pets. So for me, we go to a local granary. So look and see if you've got a local granary or a local feed store, especially that is making the animal feed. So for me, that is Conway Feed. Check with them now and see what sizes of that they offer. So this is actually organic pig feed, but here's a little tip. You can sometimes use other animal feeds for different animals. We're actually getting a dairy cow, and she will predominantly be fed grass, but because she's a dairy animal, we will be supplementing with some grain. It's really important to me that we're only feeding organic. And the dairy mixes oftentimes are byproducts, or they'll use the byproduct of like canola oil and different things like that, which is just not something that I want in our animals and I want us consuming. So the organic pig feed mix, protein, it's the macros. So it's protein percentages, carb percentages, and fat percentages that we're really looking at for our animals. And this organic pig feed actually has the same amount of protein needs that a dairy cow mix would have, but I can get this in certified organic, where the dairy mix at this granary, they don't offer that in certified organic. So I'm actually getting pig feed for our dairy animals. So really important that when you're purchasing and supplementing your feed, that you understand the requirements of their base macros. So as I said, like certain nutritions, like for salt, iodine, extra minerals, that type of thing, but also their protein, fat, and carb needs. Now, when you're storing your food, it's of utmost for the animals that you make sure that it is in an area that is going to be dry and that you're not going to have pests getting into it. Specifically, for the most part, mice and rats, you don't want getting into your animal feed. And of course, if it gets wet, then it's going to mold and it's not going to be any good. And so even if you bought it in bulk, if you don't have a way to store it properly, it's not going to do you any good because it's just going to go to waste. So we are able to put some of the bags into this, which is our container, which is completely watertight, doesn't get any water in there, and we can lock it up. Some other options are food safe 55-gallon drums. Now, it doesn't have to be food safe, but the food safe ones we like to grab, and these are ones, this one I'm getting dried out, and I'm actually getting ready to move it out to the new milking parlor when our dairy cow, Clover, is her name, when she comes home next weekend. So we're making sure that we get everything ready to go for her, and this will be stored there. But again, this will keep rodents out, it will keep moisture out, and it'll also have it out where I need it because I will be feeding her this at milking time. Now, most of us are familiar with bags of feed. And as I said, I like to get, these are the 50-pound bags of our feed. And so I was getting as many as I could fit into the back of my truck right now, and that I can store in there easily. Another thing that you'll want to consider though is not just the bags of feed, but especially if you have cattle, is salt requirements. So this is a Redmond Agriculture. We use Redmond Real Salt as our all-around salt here for canning and fermenting and all of that. But they actually have an agriculture line. So this is the Premier Mineral Salt Block I'm just getting this for our dairy cow. So you want to think about that because some of your livestock is going to need salt and other supplements. For us, our soil here was very, very low in selenium. And so I actually have some selenium salt mix on the way. I got that ordered and I ordered it in bulk. So sometimes you'll be able to find things at local greeneries and local feeds like I was with this, but they didn't have all of the stuff that we needed. So some of that I have on order from online sources. But going bigger than what we've got right here, you can get feed by the ton, or what they call like super sacks. So going next size up, and I actually have placed an order. So if you can find a local granary or a local feed store that offers these types of things, a local feed mill, ask them what sizes things come in. Oftentimes you'll need to order ahead. So we have meat birds coming, and I know how much feed 55 meat birds go through, how many pounds. And so the larger you buy, true with your food, also true when you're buying animal feed, the larger bulk you buy, the more savings you're able to get. So I'm buying a super sack, which I believe is it 500 or 600 pounds? It's very close to that. I'm trying to remember the exact. And so I'm able to take my husband's big work truck down. They can load it on the back. And then when we get it home though, we have to have a place where we can actually store that much that's dry. We don't have a barn, so we'll be putting it up on some pallets and under cover to make sure that it stays dry. But we also know with that super sack size, because it's for the meat birds, that will have gone through all of that in 8 weeks. So I do need to keep it dry, but it's not quite as crucial for feed that I plan on storing and having available to me months down the road. Now, we have been talking about livestock, predominantly chicken feed, and what we supplement with our cattle. Our cattle are predominantly grass-fed, but as I said, with the dairy cow, we're having to bring in some extra things. But what about your faithful companions, your dogs and your cats or other pets? So we have always kept our extra dog and cat food because this is basically my garage and shop filled with farm equipment. So we keep their food in these metal garbage cans. So here is dog food, here is cat food. And some things you can obviously, like I usually buy them at Costco or at our local grain mill, whichever place has the large bags for a cheaper amount at the time. I also have friends that have a feed store that will do a buy one, get one 50% off sale. So they wait until that sale and then they buy the entire year's worth of their dog food at that time because they're getting great savings. So keep an eye out for different sales and things like that. And the nice thing is with dogs and cats, they generally are not, except this horse of a guy, they're generally not eating as much as you would have a cow or a pig. And so you're able to store close to a year's worth of food in smaller space. You don't have to have as much space. Now, talking about large livestock, we need to move over and talk about their hay needs and what you need to be doing now. So here we have, this is actually haylage. So it is wrapped hay, grass hay, and it's fermented. The great thing about this is, one, even without a barn, this is all hay that we get locally, and we're able to store just outside in the elements, wind, rain, snow, all the things, and it does fine. The other nice thing about haylage is, just like fermented foods that you and I would consume, this is a fermented food, but it also has a nice protein count. And this works for both beef cattle as well as dairy cattle. So it definitely meets their nutritional needs. What you need to know though about hay is, unfortunately, with fuel prices skyrocketing right now, and also the cost of a lot of seed going up, there's a lot of farmers that are not going to be able to sow their normal hay crops that they normally do. So if you are watching this and you do not have a source that you are getting your hay from every year and you have like a standing agreement with, we've been buying hay from the same local people for so many years that we just have standing agreements. They know that we're a customer that comes to them every year and how much we get. And so that's all solidified. But if you don't have that yet, one, start seeking out any local sources that you can right now and getting your orders in. And I have to tell you, while you can order some feed online, and in the video description we'll have some different links into different sources where we're able to do that, where I have ordered some things online, your local sources and those relationships are so key in these times. And I would really encourage you to reach out to any local sources that you can and start working on those relationships moving forward, because there will most likely be hay shortages. There's also was drought conditions last year in a lot of the West where a lot of the crops are grown. And so a lot of the farmers are just saying, and I don't say this to like, oh gosh, be panic and gloom and doom, but do what you can now so that when the summer comes, you've already prepped ahead of time as much as you are able to. Now, there are some feeds that can work for all different animals. So especially if you are looking at like oats and cob and barley, like a lot of those can be fed with molasses to multiple different animals. As I said, you really want to look at, for whichever type of livestock that you're raising, what are its base requirements of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Those have all been formulated, which is why oftentimes you'll go and buy feed and it says specifically on it, you know, pig feed or meat bird feed versus hen for egg laying feed, because they have different protein requirements. And those have been formulated over the years. I mean, back, you know, way back when, you didn't just go to the feed store and have these perfectly formulated feeds. And so you would feed them whatever extra crops that you had growing and whatnot. But we do have the advantage of knowing if those requirements are met, that you're going to get the most production, and that is for the best growth and all of that for that specific animal. So trying to stay as close to that as possible is really good, but not really knowing, like we're doing our best to get as much feed bought ahead and stored up as we can for the livestock that we plan on raising. But this year in the garden, I am actually planning on putting in some different varieties of extra squash and different things like that that I know I can feed to the chickens. I could also give to the cows. And then we can also eat. There's, you know, soaking and fermenting some of your grains to make them stretch even further that you're feeding the animals. So definitely now is the time to just put a game plan in, give this some thought, and do as much as you can without being panicked in fear, but just looking ahead and being very methodical and thoughtful and putting some thought into that. Now, we of course have been talking about animal feed here and livestock feed, but this is also a great time for you to look at building up your food storage, especially your long-term food storage, because some of the things in your long-term food storage, which watch this video goes in depth on that, can also be used as animal feed, like some of your different grains. If in a pinch, you could also use them to feed your livestock.